Well, we've had a little bit of progress overnight. I have been waiting for engineers' recommendations on the pillar sections. They're the parts that I'm a little bit, well, not a little bit, quite unsure about how to construct. So I'm basically going to form, I've still got two sets of the original GQ pillars that I'm going to obviously change shape of, like recreate the whole thing from scratch, but use the same construction methods, how they've layered it into the seal and whatever. So, and I'll just continue to take videos and photos for the engineers' sake, and so it will all be sweet as far as legalities go. Worst case being that there'll have to be basically a roll bar over the back of the seats that will have the seat belt connected to as well. But either way, I need a B pillar. I may as well do it as if I'm going to mount seat belts, and it has to be structural basically. So yeah, that's a bit on hold. So what I've been doing in the meantime is working out where to start with this panel work. Like, I can't just put that there and then change something later. It's a massive amount of work. So I've got to be 100% sure on where this A pillar section goes. Things to consider here are obviously forwards and backwards. That needs to be in the right position. Now, things I've got to be aware of here is the door width from there to there. And then the relevance of the B pillar and where you're sitting in the car, hence why I've got a seat. That's one of the reasons it's a seat sitting in there. So that's one thing to consider. I've also got to consider wheel clearances. Looking at the best part of 250 mil to consider there. Now, we can cut and hack all this away, but I don't want to destroy the detail. That's the reason I chose this G60 is, well, A, it's a Nissan, it's something different, but it has these nice details and I don't want to lose that. So I can afford to trim a bit off, but I don't want to destroy and chop into that detail. That's, you know, quite like that. So if we come back over here to where the body's sitting, 250 mil there is gonna be very, very close. Well, we can probably almost measure that roughly to that body mount is about 460. 460 there. That is basically clearance is rubbing on that tyre. So that was another consideration. I didn't want to go too far forward because further forward would come in very handy, so I can get away. You might be able to see that other pillar on the other side. We're going to have some issues there with how that's sitting. I think I've got a way around it. But yeah, this is further forward would be better for that, but it'd be worse for that. So I've got to find a happy medium. Thing is up and down, the height of it, that governs the roof height and bonnet height, like everything, door height. So that's is pretty well governed by the seal to a degree. So I've pushed it up so it will clear the dash just it'll be definitely workable. So yeah, one thing I have got going for me is with that panel there, that when that's fixed in there properly and all sound and spot welded back together, that side to that side is exactly the same as the G60. So the windscreen over there, other than rust and whatever I've got to repair on it, is pretty well straight fit, which is awesome because if I have to extend stuff width-wise as well, that means the bonnet has to get widened. Roof's not a problem because I don't have one. But yeah, so that's a win. Okay, if I jump in here, I'll just go through what I was talking about with this sheet on a G60 is just flat. It's just a couple bends, a flange, and it's all flat, right from side to side. It's there with a couple of other little bits and pieces that were on it. I unspot welded all that last night, pull that off. The reason that needed to go is A, I don't need these bonnet hinges, I don't need windscreen wiper motor, the cutouts for the windscreen arms, like none of that is relevant, so I don't need any of that. I'm going to recreate this part, but it's going to have the bonnet hinges that I need on it, which is here. Like I said, I'll show you that. So pulling this part out, and because there's such a big cavity in there for the wiper arms to go side to side, to remove that gives me a much flatter, I can use that cavity basically to get from side to side, and it will soak up that radius of the dash and the previous windscreen. That's the reason behind that. Now this isn't, I don't have a clear line of sight from that point to that point through here, so, which I don't think will be an issue going on where the bonnet mounts are, so it means I'll have to just scribe that in a little bit and mould that, shape that metal to fit this. But the main thing, because that will be all under bonnet, you won't see that. Main thing is to have clear line of sight there so I can get my hinges, and then yeah, that's pretty sweet. That's better than I thought it was going to be. This is probably a blessing in disguise as well. I really want that whole panel to come back another 50 or 55 mil to be up to the A-pillar, but if I did that, my condenser and my headlights probably wouldn't fit. Well, the condenser definitely wouldn't fit. So to gain an extra, you know, I'm thinking 70 or 75 mil, so 50 there and an extra 25 in front for headlights, so they don't hit the back of the condenser or the front of the condenser. So to do that, I'm going to pick the easiest part of this panel to lengthen, which this little rib here is consistent to about here, so I'm thinking in there would be the best part to just stretch that and make that an extra 70 or so longer. That way that panel can go back against the A-pillar, get an extra 20 mil that way. Headlights, condenser. I'm going to tour in this thing, so I want aircon. I want it to be comfortable, so that's the reason for going with that. The issue with lengthening that is I also have to lengthen the bonnet. And the problem with lengthening, and I could be wrong here, but in my head, lengthening the bonnet, because it's tapered, I think I'll have to do it right at the back, or at, yeah, so the windscreen end of the bonnet, because I think it sort of squares off a fraction up there. But yeah, once again, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it, but then that bonnet effectively has to have the same, whether it be 70 or 75 mil extension in it as well. So picking the easiest point, which would be up the top, because I don't have these details to deal with. If I went right at the top, I would have a flat shape to make, and that'd be relatively easy. All right, this is exciting. 1 mil cold rolled, I believe. Hot rolled, you'll get mil scale on it, so you want to use, shit, I hope I get this right. Maybe Google it, so you don't blame it on me if you're doing something. I'm pretty sure it's 1 mil cold rolled you use for panel work. If you use hot rolled, it's harder to move, harder to form, and you've got a mil scale on it. So yeah, cold roll. Not from your Vietnamese store, but from your steel store. Two hinges for the bonnet, a little bit of a drain, so anything hitting the roof, coming forward onto the windshield and down in between this panel and the bonnet is guided around, not dropping onto the engine bay. So I'll probably put that in there too, but I'm a little bit limited on space, so I don't have a space around here. effectively is what I need to do, otherwise I'd use this one, is create this section, but then for this part here, I'll be able to come straight out for a bit, but then where the underside of the dash contours in, I'll need to come up, right across and then back down. And it's a relatively, that's why I'm starting with it, a relatively straightforward panel because it's all just flat folds, a flat panel with a few folds, and I've got a break here, so it makes it super easy. So a couple of things to be mindful of other than just getting your measurements right. Depending on what you're using, this is quite a cheap, it's good to have, it's a great backyard one, but it's by no means some professional sheet folder. But regardless of what you're folding and the machine you're folding on, you need to be careful on, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and just start folding from one side to the other. You need to work out what's going to work in your machine. I'm going to have to fold this one first. If I fold this top flange first, when I turn, this is going to be hard to sort of explain. I think that flange will get in the way of a future fold because it's not that far apart, far away from each other. Because this is a different fold, different side of sheet to fold that. If I fold this one first and spin it over to fold this one, that flange will then, I've only got 50 odd mil, and I've got to get over 100 mil. The bed of that is 100 mil, so that 50 mil upside down, that flange is going to interfere with the bed on that. So you just need to be mindful of what sheet, what fold you do first. There's always a sequence. So yeah, we'll mark, first I mark my flange, it's 15 mil. So I've marked my two sides, 15 mil, 15 mil. Now I'm going to upend the sheet because I need my marks on the other side for this fold. And that's the fold I want to do first. So that's 45 mil, 15, add them together, that's 60. So you want to set your square at 60. Nice fine texture. So that's your break point for the next, well, for the first one. I think that will be fine. I'll be able to fold them two, and then I'll be able to get this last one with no dramas at all, that nothing else will interfere. And I've left a little bit of green, meaning I've left a little bit of length on here because of the way things might pan out down on the body, just a little bit to play with. So yeah, let's fold them and we'll see how we go. It's not bad. It looks to me like that is the same, on the same angle as that first one. So that one and that flange is parallel. So we'll head back over the break, fold that one up. We'll over crank it a fraction. I think that's what we need. See that? Pretty good, pretty happy with that. So now I'll mark this break and we'll fold that. Alright, so that's the basis of our shape. That's the panel right there. Should, hard to tell with that other one in there, but that is what we're chasing. You may be able to see, you may not. This is where it comes up, and that raise in the top of the firewall is in here. So I'm hoping that's enough clearance. That'll all still get covered by the bonnet, and we'll have to infill that into what's currently there, the part that we cut out from original. So we'll cut that out. Might fold these two ends up to get them out of the way, because I'll probably still use that. And then it's a matter of infilling it all. Alright, here she is. Just guts of it. I just made a couple other presses over there, or brakes over there. So it's currently sitting, or will sit. Sitting there. Good enough for the sake of the argument. That's where it will sit, effectively. So this is the last piece of the puzzle. I'm using trusty old Chippy's sliding bevel, a multitude of different measuring tools, steel rule, squares, set squares, the old tape measure. But yeah, every panel's got these peculiar angles, and a bit of extra green on there, excess material for the contour of what's on the firewall already. So I'll cut that piece out, fold him up, and we'll get that one fitted in too, and then it'll be a complete panel. Okay, so don't think for a second that it's just the next day. It's been quite a while, a couple of weeks in fact, of me banging around with this panel. In fact, well, I'll show you. This is what I have so far. So it's just held on with Clecos at the moment. So this is actually the second one. Why is it my second one? Well, a couple of reasons. By the end of that first one, I was much more happy with my quality of metalwork. So the first parts of it weren't that great. Here's my first one. So the main reason was, because everything's fixable, but the main reason was the height issue. And like I said at the start of this video, height really was quite important. So I had to drop this down lower because we dummied up having a door mounted on this, and the sill actually stepped up 35 mil above the sill, above the GQ sill, to where the door sealed against it. So I didn't want that. So I've dropped it all, and that was also sitting in here with the door. It felt very, very high, sort of like your fat arm and like right up near your ear. So that wasn't good, which also meant the windshield, it wasn't right. So I went to the effort to redo it, and I'm much happier now. So I've also gained a bit of, this is where my clearance issue is getting at. So that obviously needs to drop down, but yeah, the panel, second panel, much nicer. The reason I have put this brake in it rather than welding that internal is because it's a lot easier to straighten, because everything warps and shrinks, and all the metal does its own thing when you heat it up, and you have to then re-straighten it. So that's easier to do up further, or so I've realised, up further than it is right down in the middle of that, in that fold. Also, instead of, as you'll see on this one here, it's upside down. I made these joins, because this is actually made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. I made these joins, once again, in the lows, which on the second one, I've made them all up on
on the ridges, so it's easier to clean up, and yeah, easier, and that line there then stays nice and crisp because it doesn't get altered. So yeah, that's not the finished product, because we're ready to go on a trip actually, so you get some new some trip content coming. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, how it's sitting. It's still still obviously a lot to do, but yeah, that is a pretty key panel to have pretty well in shape now. So yeah, let us know if this is still interesting you. I'm learning. Don't just go and think that you can build a G60 on a GQ because you listen to my waffle. I wouldn't recommend that. You want to get experience. You want to get expert opinions on how to do it. I'm loving it because I'm learning it. There's different tools, there's different techniques. Like TIG welding is new to me. Yeah, I'm loving it. It's really good fun, and yeah, the learning new skills is great. But there is a huge amount of work to go, and I'm incredibly still out of my depth, which is good. So yeah, we'll leave it there. You know, do all the same stuff. If you don't subscribe, please do that. It does help us. Like, notification bell, whatever that does. But yeah, yeah, it's good to have you on board, and stay tuned for the rest of the build.